You ever see someone on Instagram living their best life, sipping a neon drink on some overpriced rooftop, perfectly lit, not a care in the world, and think, what am I doing wrong? Maybe you're not globetrotting. Maybe you don't wake up at 5 a.m. to meditate with monks or sell crypto in Bali. Maybe, just maybe, you're stuck in a loop of self-pity, people-pleasing, and pretending you're okay when you're dying inside. Here's the truth. You don't need a glow-up. You need the courage to disappoint every damn person who thinks they own a piece of your happiness, including your past self. That's what the courage to be disliked is really about. Not a self-help cuddle session. It's a philosophical punch in the face. Today we're diving into a book that doesn't suggest you take control of your life. It dares you to admit you've been full of excuses. The book is called The Courage to be Disliked: How to Change Your Life and Achieve Real Happiness by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga, a philosopher and a professional writer who format their ideas not like a lecture, but a full-blown philosophical duel between an idealistic teacher and a jaded, cynical student. This is Socrates meets Fight Club. No fluff, no manifestation, just hard truth. It's based on Alfred Adler's psychological theories, a dude you've probably never heard of because he doesn't trend like Freud or Jung, but might be the only one worth listening to. Now, before we get into it, a quick disclaimer. This breakdown falls under the Fair Use Act. We're not here to copy the book. We're here to transform it. We're here to rip it apart, chew on the philosophy, spit out the fluff, and serve you something sharp. If that makes you uncomfortable, good. Growth starts where your ego gets punched. This book isn't about giving a damn what your therapist, your toxic ex, or your mom thinks. It's about stopping the cycle of victimhood and actually choosing to live. So let's break it down with brutal honesty, sarcasm, and zero apologies. Welcome to the courage to be disliked. Let's ruin your comfort zone. Welcome to Mindful Reads Hub. Let's get started. Rewriting the past. So here's something you're not ready to hear. That whole sob story you've been telling yourself? Yeah. The one you recite every time life gets hard, every time you sabotage yourself, every time you run from growth like it's your ex at a coffee shop. That story is a choice, not a truth, not a life sentence, just a narrative you're clinging to because playing the victim is easier than being the villain in someone else's life for finally choosing yourself. If you're already angry, good. Stay mad, let it boil, because that's where the real work starts. This book doesn't ask you to explore your inner child with scented candles and journal prompts. It tells you, flat out, trauma is not the reason you're miserable. It's not your past that's holding you hostage. It's the story you chose to tell about that past, over and over, to justify staying stuck. Let's break this down. Alfred Adler, the forgotten third musketeer of psychology, walks into the bar where Freud and Jung are throwing back cigars and existential dread, except he's not buying what they're selling. While Freud says, "You are your past," and Jung says, "You are your archetype," Adler stands up and says, "Actually, screw both of you. We are who we choose to be, right now." And that's the revolutionary fire this book lights under your seat. The past doesn't matter unless you give it power. That thing your parents did, that thing that happened in high school, that betrayal, that trauma, that failure, it's not the source of your suffering. It's your interpretation of it. It's how you've weaponized it to excuse your fear of showing up fully in the present. Here's the confrontation. You're not anxious because your dad yelled at you in 2006. You're anxious because you don't want to risk rejection, so you manufacture anxiety as a convenient out. Sound cold? That's the point. Adlerian psychology isn't here to comfort your inner child. It's here to make you realize that inner child is now your problem to parent. The philosopher in this book says it like this: you're not the product of your experiences. You're the product of the meaning you give them, period. That means you can rewrite your story anytime, but most people won't, because rewriting your story requires you to admit you've been the one holding the pen the whole time. And that's a hard pill to swallow when you've built your identity around being broken. The youth in the book resists this, hard, like most of us would. He argues, people can't just change. We're shaped by trauma. That's reality. But the philosopher challenges him, and us, with the concept of teleology, that we act in service of goals, not causes. You didn't become avoidant because you were abandoned. You act avoidant to avoid being abandoned again. That's a goal-driven decision. The anxiety, the panic attacks, the self-sabotage, all real, but also chosen because on some unconscious level, they keep you safe, they keep you small, they keep you in control. And if you're thinking, so what, now it's all my fault, you're asking the wrong question. It's not about fault, it's about agency. It's about deciding that you are not a puppet yanked around by your past. You're the one holding the strings. You don't need a time machine to heal. You need the courage to face the present without using the past as a crutch. And that's terrifying because it means giving up the comfort of blame. But on the other side, freedom. And don't you dare tell yourself you don't want that. Here's the real kicker. According to this philosophy, you're not even unhappy because of what happened to you. You're unhappy because you're choosing to be, because it's easier than risking disappointment or vulnerability or, God forbid, actual joy. Think that sounds heartless? Maybe. But sometimes the truth is. And sometimes the truth is the only thing strong enough to burn down the house of lies you've been living in. So if you want to change, you don't need a new therapist, a new journal, or a New Year's resolution. You need to stop worshipping your past and start living like your future depends on your present, because it does. You don't need permission to move forward. You need guts. Rewrite the damn story. Key takeaway: your past doesn't decide your life. You do. Trauma is not your identity. It's a chapter, not the ending. Stop giving your past the pen and start writing your future in bold, unforgiving strokes. Favorite quote: we are not determined by our experiences, but the meaning we give them is self-determining. The illusion of anger. You know what's hilarious? People who say, I didn't mean to get mad, it just happened. As if their mouth suddenly detached from their brain and turned into a rage-powered megaphone, as if their hands weren't on the steering wheel the whole time. I didn't mean to yell, I just snapped. Sure, and I didn't mean to eat that entire pizza, it just teleported into my stomach. That's the lie we love to tell ourselves, that emotions, especially anger, are some involuntary possession. But what if I told you that anger is just another tool in your manipulative little toolbox? One you pull out not when you're overwhelmed, but when you're lazy. When you're trying to get what you want without doing the uncomfortable work of explaining, negotiating, or being a grown-up. That's the slap this book delivers. Hard. With Adlerian psychology, anger isn't some mystical force that descends upon your soul. It's a strategy, a tactic, a chess move to dominate someone else when you don't have the guts or vocabulary to solve the problem. And if that makes you uncomfortable, that's because you're starting to see your own reflection in this philosophical mirror. And it ain't flattering. Let's look at the coffee shop story. A waiter spills coffee on the youth's brand new jacket. Instead of calmly stating the problem, he erupts like Mount Ego, screaming, embarrassing himself. Why? Because shouting was easier than vulnerability, because commanding attention and forcing submission felt more satisfying than calmly requesting a solution. But here's the thing, he didn't blow up because he was angry. He got angry because he wanted to blow up. Anger wasn't the cause, it was the tool. That's the core of teleology. Emotions follow intentions. You don't yell because you're angry. You become angry so you can yell. You don't get offended because someone crossed the line. You choose offense to play the victim and gain moral high ground. Brutal? Yup, but true. Think about it. Haven't you ever calmly chewed someone out the moment they did something inconvenient? Or flipped into a tantrum just to win an argument? Or suddenly found yourself calm and sweet when your boss walked in mid-rant? Exactly. The philosopher explains it like this. Emotions like anger aren't these uncontrollable urges. They're strategic, like the mom who screams at her daughter one second and answers the phone with her Sunday best voice the next. It's not that the anger disappeared. It was dismissed, put away like a screwdriver when the hammer would do. You're not a volcano. You're an actor with a script. And yes, I can hear the resistance already, but sometimes I really feel angry. It's not fake. Of course you feel it. That's the trick. The emotion feels real because the goal behind it is real. You want to win. You want control. You want the other person to shut up, listen, or just feel as small as you do inside. So you weaponize anger and convince yourself it's righteous. But here's the dangerous truth. Most of your rage is just lazy communication. Instead of explaining, you explode. Instead of connecting, you dominate. The philosopher makes a powerful point here. Indignation that lasts, the kind rooted in values and social injustice, isn't the same as the tantrum you throw when someone disrespects you. That first one, that's righteous anger. The second one, that's a temper tantrum wrapped in adult packaging. Most of us confuse the two because we don't want to admit that our anger is usually about ego, not ethics. The youth pushes back, of course. He argues that if emotions are tools, doesn't that make us less human? Just cold, manipulative robots? But that's missing the point. The goal isn't to deny emotion, it's to take back control. Because let's be honest, if every outburst you had was uncontrollable, you'd be in jail, not watching self-help videos on YouTube. You control your emotions all the time. You just choose not to when it benefits you to lose it. This is what makes Adlerian psychology so dangerous. It strips away your excuses. It tells you the reason you haven't fixed your relationships, changed your habits, or grown the hell up is because you're still choosing the emotional shortcuts. The rage, the sulking, the passive aggression, they're all tools to avoid doing the actual work of transformation. And this is where Socrates comes in. The book draws a subtle but sharp connection between Adler and the ancient Greek master of uncomfortable questions. Socrates didn't hand out truths. He cornered people into realizing they already knew the truth and just didn't want to deal with it. Adler does the same. He doesn't say anger is bad. He says, anger is your crutch and you don't need it. That's why this book isn't some philosophical TED Talk. It's a confrontation. So what does this all mean for you? It means next time you blow your top, don't justify it. Don't tweet about how you were just having a rough day. Don't text your friend, I couldn't help it. Instead, admit the truth. You chose to get angry because it worked. And then ask yourself, was that choice aligned with who you want to be? Or was it just another hit of emotional power you took to feel better for 5 minutes while losing respect for the rest of the day? You are not your emotions. You're the one writing the script, so stop pretending you're being possessed by your feelings and start owning your role as the author. It's not about controlling your anger, it's about realizing you don't need it in the first place. Key takeaway: anger isn't something that happens to you, it's something you use. Most of the time, you're not a victim of emotion, you're the director of it. And the sooner you realize you can act without reacting, the freer you become. Favorite quote: anger is a tool that can be taken out as needed. It can be put away the moment the phone rings and pulled out again after one hangs up. Embracing yourself. Let's get one thing straight. You're not waiting for your real self to emerge. You're hiding behind a fabricated version of who you think you're supposed to be and blaming the world for not clapping loud enough. Everyone wants to be authentic until it requires them to admit they've been living a performance their entire life. You know what's exhausting? Pretending to be someone else for approval you don't even respect. And yet, that's where most people live. In this awkward halfway house between who they are and who they're too scared to be. You think self-acceptance is about self-love? Wrong. It's about telling the truth. And that truth, it usually stings. This is what this part of the book is really asking you to confront. Not just, do you love yourself, but do you even know who you are without the approval of others? Because if you're spending your life editing yourself like a TikTok reel, how would you even recognize the unfiltered version? The philosopher's take is simple but jarring. You're not stuck with who you are. You're addicted to who you pretend to be. And it's not your personality that's the problem. It's your cowardice. Yep, cowardice. Because changing how you see the world is terrifying when your entire identity has been built around helplessness, victimhood, and being not enough. What's Adlerian psychology's answer to that? Lifestyle. A word that sounds like a fashion magazine, but in this context means your worldview, your tendencies, and your daily emotional autopilot. The way you operate, that's your lifestyle. And you chose it. Not consciously, maybe not maliciously, but definitely intentionally. And that means you can choose again, if you dare. See, we like to think our personality is hardwired. I'm just anxious. I've always been insecure. I've got trust issues. These aren't immutable traits. They're comfort zones, defense mechanisms you've worn so long they feel like skin. And you know why you hold on to them? Because they work. They keep you safe. They keep expectations low. They let you avoid risk, responsibility, and disappointment. You don't want to be confident. You want to be safe. You don't want to be happy. You want to be right. And that's the self-betrayal you won't admit. But here's where the real philosophical firebomb gets dropped. You're not unhappy by accident. You chose it. You heard that right. You chose to be unhappy. Why? Because unhappiness serves you. It gives you an identity. It gives you something to blame. It gives you a reason not to change. It lets you live in the fantasy of if only I had better parents, if only I was more attractive, if only I had money, time, support. But none of that's real. What's real is the choice you keep making to stay where it's safe, even if it sucks. You know what's scarier than failure? Success. Because success comes with exposure, with risk, with the terrifying possibility that your excuses were just lies. And this is where the book punches the air out of your lungs. Want to be someone different? You don't need a new job, a new body, or a new relationship. You need courage, not affirmation, not positivity. Courage. The courage to stop using your wounds as leverage. The courage to walk away from your old identity. The courage to accept that happiness is not a reward, it's a risk. The youth in the book can't wrap his head around this. He insists, like most of us do, that he can't change because his disposition is broken. He's introverted, he's negative, he's not like those happy people. But the philosopher throws that logic off a cliff. He says, change doesn't come from piling up knowledge or waiting for inspiration. It comes from one thing, action. Want to change your view of yourself? Then change how you act. Stop waiting to feel different and start acting differently. That's the real path. You move first. The mindset follows. And this part of the dialogue is brutal. It takes every excuse, your trauma, your background, your personality, your pain, and calls it what it is. Strategy. You built a lifestyle that keeps you predictable, manageable, and small. Because growth, that's unpredictable. Change, that's risky. Real joy, that's foreign. So you sabotage yourself and call it being realistic. But in Adlerian terms, it's just choosing fear over freedom. You're not afraid of failure. You're afraid of who you'll have to become if you succeed. And that means you don't need therapy, a vision board, or a spiritual awakening. You need to make one terrifying, liberating decision that the version of you that got you here is not the one who's going to get you there. You are not your mood. You are not your past. You are not the story you've been clinging to like a security blanket. You are the choices you make today, tomorrow, and every second you stay stuck in the comfort of the familiar. Want happiness? Then earn it. Want peace? Then stop feeding your suffering. Want to finally feel good in your own skin? Then stop asking the world to give you permission. Key takeaway. You are not just the way you are. You are who you choose to be, over and over. If you're unhappy, that's a decision. If you feel stuck, it's not because of your past. It's because you keep hitting snooze on your courage. Stop blaming your personality. Start owning your power. Favorite quote. The important thing is not what one is born with, but what use one makes of that equipment. Living in the present. You want to know why your life sucks? Why it always feels like you're 1 inch away from happiness but never quite touching it? Why you keep reading self-help books and watching motivational clips at 2 a.m. like they're magic potions that never work? Because you're not living your life. You're waiting for it to start. And here's the truth nobody wants to admit. The life you're preparing for, it's not coming. The dream version of you, the one who magically wakes up productive, confident, fit, loved, rich, that person only exists in your head, and worse, they're holding you hostage. This is what the philosopher in this book is screaming between the lines. Stop using your future as a trash can to dump your responsibilities into. That ideal life you're waiting for, it doesn't exist. And the longer you treat now as just a waiting room for the real show, the more you're proving you don't deserve a front row seat. Life isn't on pause, you are, and the excuse you're probably mumbling under your breath right now. But I hate myself. I have all these flaws. I can't possibly be happy until I fix them. is the most damaging lie you're telling yourself. Because it's not your flaws that are the problem. It's your belief that you can't live until they're gone. You think the future is this clean, perfect stage where you'll finally perform. But spoiler alert, the stage is now, and you're too scared to get on it. You're so terrified of tripping in front of others that you'd rather stay backstage forever and pretend you're not ready. The philosopher explains this beautifully. People say they dislike themselves not because they're self-aware, but because they are scared. Disliking yourself becomes a strategy. It's easier to sit in the corner and critique yourself than to risk the vulnerability of participation. And you know what? That makes you a coward. You're not staying on the sidelines because you're unworthy. You're staying there because it's safe. And now comes the bombshell. All your problems, all of them, are interpersonal. You don't hate your job. You hate that your boss disrespects you. You don't fear failure. You fear judgment. You don't hate your body. You hate the way you think people see your body. Without other people, your problems dissolve into air. And that means it's not your life that's hard. It's your relationships. Or more specifically, your fear of relationships. Your obsession with not being hurt, not being disliked, not being seen as weak. So instead, you wall yourself off in the prison of your own approval, alone, safe, and miserable. This book doesn't offer comfort. It offers a mirror. It tells you that the courage to be happy and to be seen and to live right now in the messy present is something you've been actively avoiding. Why? Because being happy right now would prove that all your reasons for being unhappy were just excuses, that your story, your suffering, your journey was just a way to dodge accountability. It gets even deeper. You think you're waiting for the right time, the right person, the right opportunity, but the only thing missing is your decision to participate, to engage with life as it is, not as you wish it would be. You've been treating life like it's a rehearsal, but there's no dress rehearsal for existence. This is it. The curtain is already up. And guess what? You're the only actor not performing. The philosopher hammers it in. If your life ended today, could you say it was complete? Most people wouldn't, because they've been saving their real self for a someday that never arrives. So you keep playing the same game, blaming your past, blaming your flaws, blaming your relationships. I would be happy if... But the philosopher reminds us that people don't change because they get smarter. They change because they get braver. Courage is the gatekeeper to the present. You want to change your life? Then stop looking backward. Stop waiting. Start living. You think you're deep because you're constantly analyzing your childhood? Get over it. You think you're noble because you're constantly sacrificing your joy for the right time? You're just scared. The path forward isn't found in overthinking. It's found in choosing to be here, now, without armor, without a mask, without guarantees. Key takeaway, you don't hate your life. You hate the way you've delayed living it. The present moment is all there is. If you don't claim it, you lose it. And no amount of planning or perfection will ever substitute for the courage to show up as you are now. Favorite quote, to shine a spotlight on here and now is to go about doing what one can do now, earnestly and conscientiously. The inferiority trap. You ever meet someone who brags so much you want to punch air just to release the cringe? They flaunt their job, their looks, their social circle. Hell, they'll even humble brag their trauma like it's a damn Grammy award. Oh, I was raised poor. Bullied, dumped, left out, rejected, underestimated, and that's why I'm better than all of you. We've all seen it. And let's not pretend we're above it, because most of us, we do this in quieter ways. We act like our weaknesses are badges of honor, as long as they give us a reason to never have to try. And that, right there, is the trap, the inferiority trap. It's seductive. It tells you you're broken, but also special. It gives you an excuse not to move, not to speak up, not to take risks. It wraps you in a warm blanket of I can't because, and then convinces you you're being honest. But here's the dagger twist Adler drives into your comfort zone. Your inferiority isn't a fact. It's a damn choice. You're not a victim of it. You're weaponizing it. This book doesn't just slap your excuses in the face, it rips them out of your mouth and dares you to say them again. Think you're too short, too dumb, too ugly, too broke. Adler says those aren't problems, they're stories you're hiding behind, because a feeling of inferiority isn't the problem. It's fuel. It's meant to push you forward, not chain you to the wall. But you've turned that fuel into a grave. You dug a hole, climbed in, and now you're decorating it like it's home. Adler separates feeling inferior from an inferiority complex. One is normal, the other is a lifestyle. One says, I'm not there yet, but I'm climbing. The other says, I'm not there, so why bother? And that's where most people live, deep in the swamp of why bother. That's not humility, that's fear dressed in logic. It's a genius level lie you've sold yourself so you don't have to grow. It gets worse. That same swamp is where the superiority complex festers too. Bragging, showing off, dropping names like you're in a celebrity rehab circle. Those are just flipped inferiority complexes. The louder someone screams how great they are, the deeper their doubt. If you were truly confident, you wouldn't need to broadcast it. You wouldn't be flexing trauma like it's currency, wouldn't be flashing your Gucci belt, hoping people don't notice the emptiness underneath. Even worse, many people flaunt their misery for the same reason others flaunt money. Bragging about how hard your life has been? That's not resilience, it's a manipulation tactic. It's a way to put yourself above others without actually doing the work. You play the victim to stay in control. You can't be challenged if your pain is sacred. This chapter, yes, this moment, is an attack on your ego, because everything you think makes you less than is just data, and you've been interpreting it like a coward. Not because you're weak, but because the moment you admit you can change, you also admit you've been choosing not to. And that's what Adler and this whole brutal book refuses to let you run from. The philosopher in this dialogue says something haunting. No one can live under the weight of inferiority forever. So eventually you either grow or fake superiority. And faking it might work for a while, but deep down you'll always know. That party trick, that flex, that if only I had X I'd be unstoppable speech. That's just you giving up without having to admit it. So let's be real, you're not suffering from your flaws, you're suffering from your interpretation of them. And that interpretation is subjective, meaning you can flip it. You can decide that your short height, your stutter, your weird laugh, your awkward past, all of it is a feature, not a bug. Because the real trap isn't being less than someone else, it's believing that your worth comes from comparison at all. You are not inferior, you are addicted to thinking you are. Key takeaway, your feelings of inferiority are not your truth, they're your interpretation, and you've been choosing to interpret them in a way that lets you avoid effort, change, and risk. Flip the script. Use your lack as a reason to rise, not a reason to rot. Favorite quote, no one is capable of putting up with having feelings of inferiority for a long period of time. Beyond competition. You want to know why your life feels like a constant race where you're always out of breath and never actually win? Here's your answer. You've been brainwashed into believing that life is a damn leaderboard and you're scrambling up it like some insecure Mario climbing a glitchy ladder. But here's the thing, Adler, and this brutally honest book wants you to finally grasp. Life is not a competition. You don't need to beat anyone. You just need to beat the delusional crap out of your need to beat anyone. Let's set the stage. You're constantly comparing. Your friend got into that prestigious university, your colleague scored a better job, and some influencer with a fake tan and a rented car just bought another villa in Bali. And you're there, double tapping and self-loathing, thinking you've lost a game you never even agreed to play. Why? Because deep down, you've accepted that everyone around you is your competition. And that twisted worldview turns every person into either an obstacle or a threat. But here's what the book screams between the polite lines. If you see everyone as your enemy, congratulations. You've turned life into a war you can't win. And guess what? You're the one who declared it. The philosopher in this dialogue doesn't mince words. He drops the truth like an anvil. The moment you choose competition, you choose misery. Because even if you're winning, you're not actually winning. You're addicted. Addicted to beating others, scared of losing, and constantly on the run from your own inadequacies. You're not climbing a mountain. You're running on a treadmill of self-doubt, powered by your need to be seen as better. And newsflash, no one's looking. You're the only one obsessed with your appearance, your status, your likes, your follower count. That guy you think is watching you, he's busy worrying about whether his own fly is open. But let's flip this. What if you stopped seeing others as competition and started seeing them as comrades? Yeah, I know. Sounds like motivational poster nonsense. But it's not. It's rebellion. When you decide not to compete, you throw a wrench into the system that wants you anxious, envious, and endlessly comparing. You destroy the foundation of inferiority complexes. You undermine every voice that told you you're not enough. Because the truth is, you're not supposed to be enough by someone else's standards. You're supposed to live your life, your path. Flat terrain, no ladders, no measuring tape, and let's not forget the revenge loop, the poisonous aftermath of the competition mindset. You lose a fight, and instead of walking away, you start plotting. You don't just lose the argument with your coworker, you carry it home, you stew. Maybe next week you'll embarrass them in front of the team, or passive-aggressively forget to include them on an email, because you think life is war and your ego is a general who never surrenders. Adler says that revenge isn't a personality flaw, it's a tactic. It's the next phase of the power struggle. When someone loses a battle, they switch gears and start sabotaging from the shadows, and that's where you lose not just peace, but your humanity. This entire worldview is a cage made of gold-painted competition, and you willingly lock yourself in, thinking it's a throne, but it's not. It's a prison. And here's the kicker. The key's been in your hand the whole time. You don't have to outshine anyone, you just have to shine in your own damn lane, celebrate someone else's win without interpreting it as your failure. That's not just maturity, that's freedom. The book drives this point home with blistering clarity. All those interpersonal relationship problems you're drowning in, they stem from competition. You don't have friends, you have potential rivals. You don't love yourself, you compare yourself. You don't seek joy, you chase validation. Until you let go of the delusion that your worth is measured by how many people you can outdo, you will never breathe easy. You'll be playing an unwinnable game, trying to impress people who don't care, and losing sleep over battles that don't matter. The lesson is clear and aggressive. Pull yourself out of the arena. You don't need to win life, you need to live it. And that means walking forward, not faster, not higher, just forward, at your pace, on your path. Not because you're better than anyone, but because you're you, and that's enough. Key takeaway, life's not a race, and the moment you treat it like one, you start building your misery with every lap. Drop the scoreboard, drop the rivals, walk your path like it's the only one that matters, because it is. Favorite quote, we do not walk in order to compete with someone. It is in trying to progress past who one is now that there is value. Owning your faults. You've spent your whole life thinking that mistakes are humiliating, embarrassing, career-ending, character-defining, that every stumble in public is a stain on your identity. But let's cut the fluff. Admitting fault isn't a sign of weakness. It's the first and only honest step towards strength. If your default defense mechanism is deflection, congratulations. You're not just wrong, you're deluded. The world isn't judging you because you failed. It's judging you because you pretend you didn't. The truth? Mistakes aren't personal, but your refusal to own them is. And that's exactly the slap across the ego this part of the book delivers. Not gently, not with a pat on the back. It drop kicks you off your pedestal and dares you to enjoy the fall. Because here's the real kicker. When you're locked in a power struggle, constantly trying to prove you're right, you aren't defending your values. You're defending your vanity. And vanity, unlike values, has no backbone. It's spineless. So what do you do when someone calls you out? Do you double down, raise your voice, puff your chest like a political pundit mid-tantrum? Or do you step down, not in defeat, but in sheer unbothered confidence that says, yeah, I messed up, and what? Because power is not in never making a mistake. It's in not being afraid to say you did. Adler's take is surgical in its simplicity. When you admit your fault, you're not waving the white flag of surrender. You're dropping the rope in a pointless tug of war. Because here's the brutal truth. When you obsess over being right, your world shrinks. You stop learning. You stop evolving. You start seeing everyone as an adversary in some imaginary game you invented where losing means you're worthless. You didn't climb a mountain. You built a throne on a termite hill and then cried when it collapsed. But it gets better and worse, depending on how invested you are in your own self-deception. When you evade responsibility, you aren't escaping consequence, you're stepping into a much nastier trap. You begin crafting what Adler calls life tasks, the unavoidable messes of existence that are supposed to build you. Work, friendship, love, they're not stages of life, they are confrontations, and you can't fake your way through them. You have a job not because capitalism owns your soul, though that's debatable, but because life demands contribution. You have friendships not for validation, but for growth. You love not to be worshipped, but to surrender ego. And in every one of these realms, your ability to take responsibility, not blame, not shame, not theatrics, but real accountability, is the currency that buys depth. Adler tosses in the red string metaphor where love ties us gently together. But the real danger is in the chains we forge from expectations, fear, and pride. If you can't admit you're wrong, you're not connected to others, you're shackled to their approval. That's not connection, that's a prison, built by you, decorated with your insecurities, and locked from the inside. The reason you're stuck isn't because the world's unfair, it's because you're still fighting enemies that only exist in your pride-addled imagination. You're afraid of being seen as wrong, when in reality, no one thinks that deeply about your screw-ups. They're too busy rehearsing their own. Now let's talk about that courage thing. You think courage is doing something epic, audacious, Instagram-worthy? Nope. Real courage is looking your worst moment in the face and refusing to flinch. It's not hiding behind irony, sarcasm, or a curated personality. It's saying, yeah, I got it wrong, but I'm still here, still standing, and better because of it. That's what scares the power hungry. That's what threatens the insecure. That's what frees you. But here's the kicker. None of this matters if you're too much of a coward to actually act on it. You can intellectualize Adlerian psychology all day, quote the philosopher like a philosophical parrot, but until you stop flinching at your own imperfection, you're still just a polished statue of who you could have been. Drop the performance. Pick up the truth. Key takeaway. Your refusal to admit fault is not strength, it's sabotage. Growth only begins when the performance ends. Favorite quote. Admitting mistakes, conveying words of apology, and stepping down from power struggles, none of these things is defeat. The pursuit of superiority is not something that is carried out through competition with other people. The life lie. You want to know why your life feels hollow? Why no matter how many likes you rack up, promotions you snag, or compliments you fish for with Instagram candids, you still feel like an imposter sitting on a throne made of smoke. It's because you've fallen for the biggest scam in existence. Not a pyramid scheme, not crypto. No, this con is far more insidious. You believe that the opinions of others determine your worth. Welcome to the life lie. What we're dealing with here is a pandemic of performance. You've been conditioned, no, domesticated, into believing that unless someone is watching, it doesn't count. That unless someone approves, it's not valid. And that unless you're recognized, you might as well not exist. That's not living. That's being a slave to the spotlight, the claps, and the nods from people who don't even know themselves, let alone you. So here's the punch in the gut you didn't ask for, but desperately need. Seeking recognition is not a virtue. It's a form of dependency. It's living your life through the rearview mirror of someone else's judgment. You want applause? Fine. Go be a clown, but don't pretend you're walking a path of self-realization while you're crawling for validation. The book you've been pretending to read, the one you quote to sound enlightened at dinner parties, has a very different message. Stop acting. Stop posturing. The psychology of possession, as it's brilliantly trashed in the dialogue, tells you to obsess over what you have. Talent, charm, grades, beauty, like some kind of collector of traits. But Adler's alternative, the psychology of use, says screw the labels. It's what you do with what you have that matters. You don't need a trophy shelf of identity. You need to live authentically now. But of course, using what you've got without needing to be patted on the back for it takes what? Courage. And let's be honest, most people don't want courage. They want comfort. They want to coast on excuses like, well, I could be great, but no one believes in me. Cry me a river. Belief from others is optional. Belief in yourself is non-negotiable. And let's really drag the curtain back on the charade. You say you want to be free, yet you live every day chained to the approval of your parents, your partner, your co-workers, and your social media following. You are what the book calls unfree. Your life is dictated by the craving for recognition. And guess what? Even when you get it, it's never enough. That dopamine hit, fleeting, that gold star, a leash. So what happens when you stop chasing recognition like a starving dog? The bottom doesn't fall out. Actually, you rise. You begin to act from a place of contribution. You pick up trash, not for a thank you, but because clean streets matter. You show up with kindness, not because you're being filmed for a Hallmark special, but because decency doesn't need an audience. You live from your core, not your curated persona. But doing this, it's not for the faint of heart. It's a declaration of war against the ego. It means giving up the seductive lie that your worth can be externally confirmed. You must become the source of your own validation. That's not narcissism, that's sovereignty. And if you're still whining, but what's wrong with wanting to be seen, then you've missed the point. Wanting to be seen is human, needing to be seen is pathological. One creates art, the other creates anxiety. Key takeaway: freedom and happiness don't coexist with the desire for recognition. The more you seek approval, the less you live authentically. Live for contribution, not applause. Favorite quote: there is no need to be recognized by others. Actually, one must not seek recognition. This point cannot be overstated. Living for yourself. You're not going to like this, but you need to hear it anyway. No one is coming to hand you your freedom on a silver platter, especially not the people whose expectations you've been trained to worship like commandments from Mount Olympus. And yet here you are, knees bruised from decades of genuflecting before the altar of other people's approval. Welcome to the twisted theater of your life, where your performance has always been about making others clap. It's exhausting, it's fake, and it's the reason you can't breathe. So let's slice through this mess with a razor of reason, because sugarcoating is for people still addicted to being liked. The obsession with recognition, praise, and pleasing others isn't virtue. It's spiritual cowardice in designer clothing. You want applause from people who wouldn't even notice if you disappeared tomorrow. And for what? So they can nod and smile while you drown in a sea of obligations that aren't even yours? The book doesn't whisper, it kicks you in the ego. It says flat out, do not live to satisfy the expectations of others. You know why? Because if you do, you're not living, you're performing. And guess what? The audience doesn't care if you collapse backstage. That applause, it's conditional. It dies the second you stop meeting their script. You've been cast as a supporting character in everyone else's tragedy. Meanwhile, the only life you'll ever live is playing in a loop you didn't even write. The reality check grenade the book throws is this: if someone else wants you to be that kind of person and you comply, congratulations, you've just abandoned yourself. And for what? Their comfort, their standards, their unfulfilled dreams they secretly resented you for achieving before they could. That's not loyalty, that's emotional servitude. You were not born to carry their bags. Let's crank it up. The book introduces the concept of separation of tasks. And if that sounds like corporate productivity jargon, you're not listening hard enough. It's philosophical TNT. It's asking one simple question that detonates codependency. Whose life is this? Whose outcome is this? Whose task is this? If your kid fails to study and bombs their exam, that's not your failure as a parent. That's their task. If your partner doesn't show up emotionally, that's their responsibility, not your deficiency. If your mom cries because you didn't marry the tax attorney she picked out of a catalogue of boring sons-in-law, that's her emotion to manage. You are not her emotional sponge. Don't soak it up. Stop confusing manipulation with care. People will cry, rage, guilt trip, gaslight, and wax poetic about your obligations. But that's the trick. That's the trap. That's how you stay stuck. Because if you refuse to cut the cord, they'll keep tightening the noose. You want to simplify your life? Start here. Discard other people's tasks, not later. Now draw the line. Let them deal with their own disappointment. Let them handle their own bitterness. If you pick up every emotional bag thrown at your feet, don't complain when your back breaks. You're not selfish for doing this. You're sovereign. Let's get that straight. In fact, intruding on someone else's life to fix or help them isn't altruism, it's control. You want to force your kid to be a doctor because you couldn't make it? That's your ego using their life as a second chance. And it's disgusting. Back off. The entire idea here is revolutionary because it forces you to take radical ownership, not of others, but of yourself. You separate your identity from the guilt machine that tells you you're a bad person for living your own life. This isn't about being cold, it's about being clear. The people who truly love you don't want a puppet, they want a person. And yes, when you finally stop dancing for their applause, people might leave. Let them. The ones who remain are the ones who never needed the performance in the first place. And if you don't have the courage to draw that line, you will die having never lived. Not your life, at least. Key takeaway: you do not owe anyone the sacrifice of your own authenticity on the altar of their expectations. Their feelings are not your responsibilities. Their vision is not your obligation. Their disappointment is not your failure. It's time to burn the script. Favorite quote: when one seeks recognition from others, one is living other people's lives. Resolving relationship problems. You've spent your entire life learning how to put on a mask just thick enough to keep people at a safe emotional distance, one where you can still hear them cheer, but not close enough to feel their disapproval. And the sad thing is, you think that's connection. You think nodding along in silent bitterness as your boss yells or biting your tongue while your family dismantles your dreams at dinner is being an adult. You think enduring interpersonal agony without breaking is the price of existing in society. Wrong. What you're doing isn't maturity, it's masochism dressed up as duty. Let's slice right into it like Alexander and that damn Gordian knot. Your relationships are a mess because you keep showing up to wars that aren't yours. You've mistaken other people's anxiety, disapproval, expectations, and judgments as your responsibility, and it's making you chronically miserable. You're tangled up in emotional contracts no one ever signed, but you keep renewing. Out of guilt, out of fear, out of a desperate need to be liked by people who wouldn't even pick you in a trust fall exercise. The truth that Adlerian psychology spits in your face is this: every single problem you have is a relationship problem. There is no such thing as an internal dilemma divorced from the social world. You're not anxious about your job, you're anxious about what your colleagues think. You're not unsure about your future, you're terrified your parents won't approve of your choices. Peel back the layers, and at the core is always someone else's gaze that you've internalized like a parasite. Now, here's the brutal clarity. You don't have to fix those relationships. You don't even have to keep them. You can cut through them. Not slowly, not diplomatically, just cut. You've been trying to untangle emotional knots with trembling fingers when what you need is a sword. Just like Alexander, you stop wasting your life solving a puzzle that's designed to keep you stuck. Whose task is this? Is the blade. Ask it, then use it. If your father is disappointed that you're not taking over the family business, that's his task. If your partner thinks your boundaries are selfish, that's their task. If your boss flips out because you said no to unpaid overtime, guess what? Still not your task. Your job is to manage your own damn life. You are not the emotional janitor of everyone else's feelings. Stop cleaning up after their chaos. But let's be real. There's a price. You might lose people. You might be called cold, cruel, ungrateful. You might be disliked. Good. That means you're finally living with integrity. People don't hate you for being a monster. They hate you because you've stopped being controllable. They can't guilt you anymore. They can't weaponize their disappointment. You're not their puppet, and they're furious. And yet, this is the beginning of freedom. Not the Instagram kind where you pose on cliffs and call it healing, but the gut-wrenching, soul-cleansing kind of freedom that makes you confront the fact that you've been living for everyone but yourself. Freedom means relinquishing the need to be understood or applauded. It's choosing what's right over what's easy. It's realizing that the praise you crave is a prison dressed up as affirmation. You want a revolutionary life? Start by doing something unthinkable. Disappoint everyone who's been managing you like a social project. Disappoint them spectacularly. Blow up their expectations. Watch their narratives about you crumble. And in that fallout, you'll find yourself not the version curated for survival, but the version forged through sovereignty. You're not obligated to stay in soul-draining dynamics just because they're old or because the world says so. Sever them. Separate your tasks. And when someone gasps and clutches their pearls at your audacity to live for yourself, you smile, not because you're cruel, but because you finally see how long you were shackled by invisible chains made of shoulds, and what will they think? And if someone dares to ask you why you're suddenly so selfish, you say this: because I finally realized I'm not here to be liked, I'm here to be free. Key takeaway: every interpersonal problem you're entangled in can be sliced apart by one question. Whose task is this? Cut the knot. Freedom isn't about escape, it's about ownership. Favorite quote: destiny is not something brought about by legend, but by clearing away with one's own sword. Finding your place. The problem with most people isn't that they're trapped in toxic relationships, it's that they keep trying to negotiate their self-worth inside them. Imagine clinging to a barbed wire fence, complaining about the pain, but refusing to let go because, well, you've already got a good grip. That's what happens when you refuse to cut ties, emotional, psychological, or social, that are strangling you in the name of being liked, accepted, or validated. You think you're being kind, you're being spineless. Let's make this painfully clear. Your desire for recognition is a straitjacket. It's not a badge of humanity, it's a leash. And the worst part, you put it on yourself. Every time you say yes to something that doesn't serve you, because you're terrified someone might not like you, you're feeding that life lie Adler railed against. You think freedom means running off to Bali and drinking from coconuts on a beach? Cute. No, real freedom is psychological. It's deciding you're okay being disliked. Not because you want to be edgy or difficult, but because you finally grew the courage to be yourself without auditioning for applause. So you're at war with your relationships. Big deal, we all are. But the difference between the mentally imprisoned and the emotionally mature is this: one keeps playing the same game, hoping for different rules, and the other flips the board and walks away. Adler's got no time for your passive-aggressive whining. You say someone mistreats you? Good. Then stop pretending you're chained to the interaction like a Victorian ghost dragging around social obligations. You're free to walk away. Always were. The chains? Imaginary, self-imposed, and let's smash another illusion while we're at it. That convoluted tango of, I'll change so you'll love me. It's manipulation dressed in emotional neediness. You don't grow when you play that game. You shrink. Want to fix a toxic relationship? Stop trying to fix the other person. That's not your job. Adler is crystal clear. Separate the tasks. If your peace depends on someone else's reaction, you're a hostage, not a free agent. The only task that belongs to you is your own behavior, your own attitude, your own path forward. Oh, and the fear of being disliked? That's not some moral high ground. It's cowardice. Let's not romanticize it. You'd rather suffocate under social approval than stand tall in your authenticity. But Adler says, if you're truly living according to your own convictions, you will be disliked because the masses prefer comfortable lies to inconvenient truths. Being disliked is a tax on integrity. Pay it with pride. Here's where it gets real gritty. You think your relationship dynamics are some tragic soap opera? Spoiler alert, they're not that deep. You're holding all the cards. You always were. You just keep handing them over and calling yourself powerless. Don't like the way your boss talks to you? Hand them their condescension like a return to sender letter and move accordingly. Is your partner treating you like a second-class citizen? That's their task. Yours is deciding whether you'll tolerate it. It's not noble to stick around waiting for them to change. It's masochism. This isn't just philosophy. It's a practical guide to setting fire to the illusions you've been nesting in. You've constructed a fragile little ego world where everyone else's opinion is more sacred than your own sanity. And for what? Validation? Praise? If you live for applause, don't be surprised when you can't hear yourself think. Adler's message? Get out of the cult of approval. Burn the altar where you sacrifice your identity to be accepted. It's not radical, it's necessary. You don't need another affirmation, you need a wake-up call. You need the kind of truth that guts you. And here it is, you're free, but you're acting like a prisoner because you're too afraid of the loneliness that might come with liberation. But let me tell you, solitude with authenticity is better than community bought with self-betrayal. There's no point in making peace with a world that demands your silence. Stop adjusting your volume to make others comfortable with your frequency. Say what you mean, set the boundary, cut the tie, burn the bridge if it means saving yourself. The courage to be disliked isn't about rebellion. It's about finally telling yourself the truth and living it loudly. Key takeaway: real freedom begins the moment you stop negotiating your worth in other people's eyes. Stop clinging to dead relationships, imaginary obligations, and self-erasing expectations. You're holding all the cards. Start playing your own damn game. Favorite quote: the cost of freedom in interpersonal relationships is that one is disliked by other people. Beyond the self. The illusion that you are special, that you are somehow central to the universe, that people orbit you like moths around a divine flame. You've got to murder that fantasy, bludgeon it, set it on fire, scatter its ashes. Because here's the truth: you are not the center of the world. You're not even the center of your own narrative if you live in fear of what others think of you. And yet, you walk around like a dethroned monarch, wondering why nobody bows anymore. Newsflash: nobody cared to begin with. They're too busy obsessing over their own imaginary crowns. And this delusion, it's the mother of all interpersonal problems. Not because you're evil or narcissistic, but because you've mistaken your craving for approval as some noble quest for connection. It's not. It's a pathetic addiction to validation. Adler calls it attachment to self. But let's call it what it really is: emotional hoarding. You hoard compliments like a dragon hoards gold, and then cry when the world won't praise you for existing. But the antidote isn't in becoming a selfless monk or pretending you don't care what people think. That's just ego in drag. The shift, Adler suggests, is in flipping your obsession from how you're seen to what you can give. That switch from self-interest to social interest is the atomic bomb that annihilates loneliness. And no, that doesn't mean becoming a doormat. It means finally stepping up to the plate and realizing you matter because you contribute, not because you're noticed. You're a piece in a giant, messy, incomprehensible jigsaw puzzle called community. Not the neighborhood watch or the Slack channel at work. I mean all of it. Humanity, plants, dead philosophers, the earthworm under your shoe. Community, in the Adlerian sense, isn't limited to your Wi-Fi range. It's infinite, universal. And you only start to find your place when you stop demanding the spotlight and start lighting the stage for others. And the idea that you need to be someone before you can belong, that's more spiritual fraud. You belong the moment you decide to show up and contribute, not when you're promoted. Not when your TikTok blows up. Now, but this requires a type of courage most people never dare summon. The courage to be just part of the world. The courage to be a participant, not a protagonist. Let's really go for the jugular now. You've spent your life being afraid to be rejected. That fear has turned you into a ghost. You avoid real relationships, duck from confrontation, and retreat the moment someone doesn't treat you like royalty. Why? Because you think being vulnerable will shatter your illusion of importance. But the irony, that illusion is exactly what keeps you isolated. Here's the reality pill, bitter and true. Belonging doesn't come from hiding. It doesn't come from proving your worth. It comes from choosing to contribute, to show up, to say, I'm here. I'm not perfect, but I'm in. It's not about what others give to you. It's about what you're willing to give, even when no one's watching. That's community, that's freedom, and if that sounds like some woo-woo nonsense to you, that's because you've been conditioned to believe that power comes from control. Adler turns that garbage ideology inside out. Control is bondage, contribution is liberation. You're free the moment you realize no one owes you anything, and yet you still choose to give. Oh, and let's address the final elephant stampeding through your ego, the idea that you're the protagonist of your life. Sure, fine, you're the star of your own movie, but it's not a blockbuster. It's a film that only plays in your own head. You want a real story? Make someone else's life better. Be a plot twist in their film. That's when your story becomes worth telling. So kill the main character complex. Rip up the script you wrote in crayon at age 5 that says the world is supposed to love you. Write a new one. Today, I did something that made someone else's life suck a little less. Do that enough times and you'll wake up one day realizing you don't need the spotlight. You are the light. Key takeaway: you are not the center of the world, and that's the best news you'll ever hear. Real belonging and real freedom come when you flip the script from self-interest to social interest and give more than you expect to get. Favorite quote: "The globe may be dotted with an infinite number of centers. You are a part of a community, not its center." Listening to the community. Let's stop pretending that playing nice with everyone is a virtue. You've been gaslit into believing that getting along with everyone is a moral obligation. It's not. It's a trap. And the moment you start bending your spine into origami just to fit into every room, you've already betrayed yourself. What if the problem isn't that the world is full of difficult people, but that you're trying too damn hard to be digestible? What if the real solution is to stop listening only to the voices in your tiny echo chamber and start tuning into the roar of a much larger, saner, more honest community? See, what no one told you, because the system benefits from your silence, is that the so-called authorities you bow down to are often just insecure adults with power complexes hiding behind job titles. That boss who thinks he's God's gift to management, that teacher who thrives on obedience, they're all operating inside their own little teacups, mistaking the sound of their own voice for truth. And if you think those voices deserve to rule your life, congratulations, you've just agreed to live under a dictatorship of the mediocre. The philosopher in the book delivers the slap with surgical precision. Listen to the voice of the larger community, not the voice of your school, not your hypercritical family, not the choir of needy co-workers, the larger community, that infinite, ever-expanding ecosystem of people who aren't trapped in the status game you keep playing. The point? When your current surroundings reek of judgment and fear, it's not because the world is broken, it's because you're stuck in a too small room, breathing the same recycled air of approval and rebuke. Praise and rebuke, the two-headed snake that slithers through every relationship poisoned by hierarchy. You think being praised feels good? That it's empowering? That it proves your worth? False. Praise is just control wrapped in a Hallmark card. When your boss says, "Good job," what he means is, "You did what I wanted. Stay obedient." Praise, just like punishment, implies that you're inferior, that someone else's standards matter more than your self-defined purpose. In short, both are manipulation, sugar-coated slavery. That's why you don't need praise. You need encouragement. Encouragement doesn't come from above. It comes from beside you. It's horizontal, not vertical. It's a friend saying, "You've got this." Not a manager saying, "Impress me again." Encouragement is the recognition that you're already whole, already capable, already enough. Not because someone in authority said so, but because you decided to participate in a community where contribution, not validation, is the currency of belonging. So let's talk about real support. It's not someone fixing your problems for you. It's not unsolicited advice masquerading as mentorship. Real support is standing shoulder to shoulder with someone and saying, "I see you. I won't carry your load, but I'll walk with you while you carry it." That's the encouragement approach. That's what the book beats into your skull over and over again, like a truth you've been ducking all your life. When you stop rebuking and stop praising, what you're left with is honest human connection. That's the revolution the book is offering you. Cut the puppet strings, ditch the approval addiction, learn to say thank you instead of good job. Gratitude, not judgment, is the new foundation. Why? Because thank you is free of conditions. It means you made a difference. No scores, no stars, just presence. If you think this is too soft, too abstract, too woo-woo to apply in the real world, that's because you've been trained to respond to power, not partnership. You've been raised on incentives, not encouragement. You've been taught that self-worth is rented from other people's opinions, not earned through authentic contribution. And that's the lie that's kept you small. Stop living for praise. Stop fearing rebuke. Learn to build horizontal relationships where no one is above you and no one is beneath you. Want to feel like you matter? Then start contributing. Not to get noticed, not to get ahead, just because you can. That's where real courage is born. Key takeaway: Real belonging comes not from obeying the expectations of those above you, but from contributing alongside others in relationships where no one is elevated and no one is diminished. Favorite quote: "The more one is praised by another person, the more one forms the belief that one has no ability." Valuing yourself. Here's the kind of message most people avoid hearing because it kicks egos in the teeth and dares you to answer back with something better than your usual victimhood mantra. So let's stop pretending your self-worth is just magically going to inflate itself if you keep waiting around for someone else to clap for you. Because it won't, it hasn't, and it never will. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You're not supposed to feel valuable because someone said you are. You're supposed to contribute, to show up, and to offer something to others without a damn guarantee that anyone will notice. That's where your value comes from. And that's what this entire chunk of the book shoves in your face, whether you're ready or not. You think your life doesn't matter because you're not praised. You sulk because nobody noticed your heroic effort of picking up someone else's coffee cup. And when nobody thanks you, you stop. Guess what? That's not virtue, that's performance. You weren't doing it to help, you were doing it for applause. You wanted your good citizen trophy. Sorry, but doing something good only because you expect a reaction is manipulation wearing a smiley face. It's a bribe with extra steps. Adler rips this logic apart by insisting that true self-worth isn't a reward you beg others to hand you. It's a byproduct of participation. When you finally get out of your own head and start contributing to someone else's world, you begin to matter. Not because someone said so, but because you know it, you feel it, because you made it true through action, not imagination. And that's the kind of courage people don't talk about because it doesn't come with likes or comments. The youth in this philosophical back and forth plays the perfect role of our inner doubter. "I shelve books at the library," he whines. "I could disappear and no one would notice." First of all, that's a pretty convenient excuse to avoid effort. Second, it's flat out wrong. If your contribution can be replaced by a machine, that doesn't mean you are worthless. It means you haven't figured out how to inject yourself into the act of service. You're holding back. You're afraid to be seen, afraid to care, afraid to connect. That's not humility. That's cowardice dressed up as rationality. You don't get to use invisibility as a defense when you haven't even tried to matter. That's like staying mute in class and then crying that no one listens to you. You want value? Stop begging for it like a child and start creating it like an adult. And that's what this idea of community feeling punches home. It's not about becoming everyone's favorite person. It's about becoming someone useful in their story. You start with one person, one real connection. Not a fan base, not a crowd, just one damn person. Adler throws gasoline on this fire by saying recognition should be irrelevant. Yes, irrelevant, because once recognition becomes your oxygen, someone else owns your lungs. You suffocate when they turn their back, so don't live for claps. Don't live to be liked, live to be of use. The moment you realize that I can contribute, that I can help, that I can lift even one other human being, you don't need anyone to clap because you're already winning. Here's where most people fold. They say, okay, but that sounds lonely. What if nobody joins in? Adler's answer is surgical. You start anyway. Others may never join you, and it doesn't matter. This isn't about them. This is about whether you've got the backbone to do what's right without needing permission. You want meaning? Then do something meaningful without needing to feel special about it. That's value. That's courage. That's maturity. The whole myth of feeling worthless falls apart under the weight of this logic. It's not that you have no worth. It's that you've spent your whole life looking for it in the mirror instead of in motion. You're not supposed to see your value. You're supposed to live it. If you want to feel useful, go be useful. But if you keep holding your worth hostage, waiting for someone else to pay the ransom with praise, don't be surprised when the world keeps scrolling past you. And no, this isn't about being some martyr who sacrifices their life for others. It's about connecting, sharing, participating, and most importantly, doing all of it without ego. You're not the center, you're not the savior, you're a thread in a much bigger web. When you start acting like it, the fear dissolves, the inferiority complex stops whispering, and your life, finally, starts mattering in a way you can feel in your bones. Key takeaway: Your value isn't a feeling, it's a decision. You don't find it, you don't inherit it, you don't even earn it, you create it by contributing. If you want to matter, stop waiting and start acting. One honest gesture of service is worth more than a lifetime of waiting for applause. Favorite quote: "It is only when a person is able to feel that he has worth that he can possess courage." Overcoming self-consciousness. Imagine spending your entire life trying to convince the world that you're better than you believe you are. You've slapped on layers of self-affirmation like duct tape over a leaky pipe, whispering mantras in the mirror just loud enough to drown out the echo of your own insecurity. "I am enough," you say, voice trembling, while every cell in your body is screaming, "You fraud!" And the kicker? You've confused that for strength. You've mistaken posing for power. But let's get one thing straight. Confidence isn't about pumping your chest full of hot air until it bursts. It's about finally shutting the hell up and facing what you've been so desperate to hide. Your unfiltered, unpolished, perfectly imperfect self. Now, most people are wandering around in an existential costume party, masking their fear of being unworthy behind forced grins and overcompensated achievements. They think self-affirmation, those overly positive, borderline delusional affirmations, will cure their deep-rooted inferiority. But all that does is slap concealer on a bullet wound. You don't need to affirm the version of yourself you wish existed. You need to accept the one that does. That's the idea Adler and the book smashes into your skull like a sledgehammer wrapped in velvet. Self-acceptance over self-affirmation. There's no value in pretending you're 100% when you know damn well you're struggling to hit a C-. Accepting yourself at 60% and working with that reality is not defeat. It's where real transformation begins. Want to build a better version of you? Start by calling out the imposter you've been parading around and say, "You're fired." Self-consciousness though, that's the silent killer. You're not shy, you're just terrified someone's going to expose your not so perfect interior. You're not quiet because you're introverted, you're gagged by fear that the room will laugh when you open your mouth. This isn't humility, it's self-absorption masquerading as modesty. And the worst part is you call this a virtue. But here's the truth bomb. Excessive self-consciousness isn't noble, it's narcissistic. You're still making yourself the center of the universe, just now in a darker, self-pitying way. So what's the alternative? Community feeling, social interest, horizontal relationships? That's where the transformation lives. When you stop obsessing about how others perceive you and start focusing on how you can contribute, something radical happens. You actually start to matter. Not because you've tricked people into thinking you're flawless, but because you've shown up. Flaws, fumbles, and all. You participate, you connect, you serve. That's how confidence is built, not by chanting mantras, but by stepping into the world willing to get bruised and still standing. Let's talk trust versus confidence. Most people confuse the two like they're ordering from a menu. Trust comes with receipts. I trust you because you've proven yourself. Confidence, that's a leap of faith with no safety net. Adlerian psychology demands you throw the parachute out the plane and jump anyway. Confidence in others, real, unshakable confidence, is believing in people not because they've earned it, but because you've decided they're worthy of it. No strings, no collateral, no backup plan. And yeah, sometimes you'll get screwed. People will betray you, use you, disappoint you. That's life. But if your whole existence is built around avoiding hurt, congratulations, you've achieved nothing but safety in mediocrity. When you withhold confidence in others, you invite doubt into every relationship. And doubt is poison. People can smell it. They can taste it in your tone, feel it in your handshake. You want connection? You want to belong? Start by believing, not bargaining. And here's a hard truth. If you constantly live on edge, afraid to be wrong, afraid to be judged, you're not cautious, you're cowardly, you're hiding from life. But when you practice self-acceptance, confidence in others, and contribution to something bigger than your ego, you step into a life that feels like it fits. You stop performing and start living. This isn't a kumbaya call for blind optimism. This is a declaration of war against the ego's favorite pastime, pretending. We don't need more people pretending they're invincible. We need people honest enough to say, I'm figuring it out. That's courage. That's strength. That's what makes you human. And frankly, it's what makes you worth listening to. Key takeaway. Confidence isn't about trusting outcomes. It's about trusting the process of showing up as you are and extending that same radical permission to others. Favorite quote, there is no need to go out of one's way to be positive and affirm oneself. It's not self-affirmation that we are concerned with, but self-acceptance. The essence of work. You think you work hard. You think hustling into burnout makes you noble. You think burying yourself in your to-do list and measuring your worth by your productivity scorecard gives your life meaning. Hate to break it to you. No, scratch that. I love to break it to you. You've bought into one of the most toxic life lies ever sold, that you exist to be efficient, not to be human. Congratulations, you're not a machine. You're just pretending to be one. And here's the worst part. You call it purpose. You call it legacy. You plaster over your emptiness with a title and call it success. But guess what? No amount of output will ever fill the void of a person who's forgotten how to simply be. You're not burnt out because you're too busy. You're burnt out because you're doing the wrong kind of busy. You've confused contribution with control. And if you're honest, and I mean ruthlessly honest, you're not building a life. You're avoiding one. According to Adlerian psychology, the essence of work is not wealth, status, or being somebody. The essence of work is contribution, not the flashy, ego-serving, Instagram-worthy kind of contribution, but the kind where you show up, do your part, and know deep in your bones, I am of use to someone. That feeling, that invisible thread between your efforts and the well-being of the world around you, that's what gives your life weight. Not likes, not promotions, not your boss's approval. Worth is forged in quiet usefulness, not loud achievement. Let's talk about the absurd tragedy of modern ambition. You know the type, working 14-hour days to prove they're irreplaceable while simultaneously making themselves miserable. They're the first ones in the office, the last ones to leave, and the most disconnected from their own families. They call it commitment. I call it cowardice. Because that's exactly what it is, a refusal to face the parts of life that can't be optimized. Love, vulnerability, uncertainty, parenting, purpose. These people aren't successful, they're hiding in spreadsheets. Here's the uncomfortable truth Adler lays bare. Workaholism is a life lie. It's a socially acceptable escape hatch from the hard stuff. It's a clean excuse to avoid relationships, ignore your kids, and convince yourself you matter more than you feel. But real life isn't about hiding in productivity. It's about participating in humanity. Cooking a meal, listening to your partner, wiping your kids' tears. And none of that makes it onto your LinkedIn bio, does it? Which is probably why you undervalue it. You want purpose? Here it is, and it's offensively simple. Stop measuring your life by your resume and start measuring it by your contribution to the people around you. Clean a dish, tell the truth, listen like you care. Purpose isn't something you build, it's something you practice. And don't think age lets you off the hook. This isn't some "the youth are the future" garbage. The philosopher throws down hard. Young people who pursue self-acceptance and confidence in others early are already ahead of the adults still clinging to their vertical power games and social approval addiction. You don't have to wait to become wise. You just need to stop being arrogant enough to believe that maturity is about age. It's not. It's about courage. The courage to contribute without applause. And for those of you who've built your identity around being indispensable, around being the breadwinner, the martyr, the overachiever, congratulations, you've trapped yourself in a very elegant cage. If your entire worth hinges on what you do, rather than who you are, you're not living. You're auditioning. And the audience? They stopped clapping years ago. Adler flips the whole system on its head. True happiness isn't about recognition, it's about contribution without needing recognition. Imagine that. Imagine doing something valuable just because it's valuable, not because someone else said so. This is where most people get off the ride, right? Because the moment contribution isn't about you, the ego throws a tantrum. But how will I know I matter if no one tells me I do? The answer is savage. You won't. You'll feel that you matter. And if you don't feel it, you don't need to do more. You need to start contributing for the right reasons. The work of being human isn't glamorous, but it is sacred. So stop outsourcing your identity to your career. Stop glorifying burnout, and stop pretending your busyness is noble when it's just cowardice with a briefcase. Key takeaway: you are not your job. You are not your paycheck. You are not your title. You are the value you bring to the world when no one is watching, applauding, or even noticing. The essence of work is contribution, and if your work isn't rooted in that, you're not working. You're performing. Favorite quote: labor is not a means of earning money. It is through labor that one makes contributions to others and commits to one's community, and that one truly feels, I am of use to someone. Embracing happiness now. Imagine this. Someone hands you the remote control to your own life, and you immediately drop it in the trash. Not because you're too humble, not because you're confused, but because you've been conditioned to believe that if you're not doing something extraordinary, you're nothing. You want joy, but only on your terms. You say, I'll be happy when I'm admired, respected, remembered. And in that one sentence, you sell your soul to an imaginary future, a highlight reel that will never air. You postpone happiness until the universe submits a resume with your name on it in bold. That's the disease we're dissecting today. The one where you equate your worth with your achievements and refuse to live unless it feels like a victory lap. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people aren't chasing happiness. They're avoiding failure, but instead of just doing nothing and being honest about it, they package their avoidance in ambition. I want to change the world, they say, when they can't even change their morning routine. I'm not satisfied being normal, they yell, from a desk they hate or a bed they can't get out of. All the while, they miss the atomic bomb-sized truth right in front of them. You don't need to be great to be happy. You need the courage to stop pretending that greatness is the requirement. The philosopher in this psychological duel exposes that drive to be special as a trap. The illusion of specialness makes us allergic to normalcy. So allergic, in fact, that if we can't be especially good, we'll settle for being especially bad. Kids throw erasers across classrooms to get attention. Adults throw their lives away in pursuit of validation, swapping the playground for office cubicles and dead relationships, screaming, "Look at me," just louder and with better haircuts. But it's the same damn move, pursuit of easy superiority. You might think aiming for normal is surrender, that believing you're enough as you are is settling. But no, the philosopher argues, it's liberation. It's about refusing to live a life that only matters if it's filmed, posted, and goes viral. True courage is being unremarkable and still showing up like it matters. It's not about giving up on your dreams. It's about letting go of the delusion that your worth is dependent on achieving them. And what if I told you that joy, yes, real, unsponsored, unfiltered joy, doesn't come from crossing the finish line. It doesn't come from being featured in a magazine, having a best-selling book, or even being right. It comes from contribution. That's it. Being of use, being part of something. Not conquering the mountain, but knowing you helped someone else get their footing. The philosopher shatters the modern myth that happiness requires a resume. Instead, he hands us something frighteningly simple. If you feel like you're of use to someone in some way, you're already enough. You're already winning. But of course, we hate that answer because it's not glamorous. It's not viral. It doesn't come with applause. So we chase visibility instead of value, recognition instead of relevance. The youth in the dialogue lashes out, scoffs at the simplicity, demands something more grandiose. He wants to be remembered, and don't we all? But the philosopher calmly dismantles that delusion. If your happiness depends on being remembered, then your happiness dies with your memory. So here's the bombshell. Happiness isn't a prize for excellence. It's the side effect of living with purpose right now as you are. It's about letting go of the toxic fantasy that only the Einsteins and MLKs of the world get to live fulfilled lives. Because newsflash, most of them weren't happy either. Being a genius isn't the cure. It's just another mask. You want to be happy? Stop trying to prove your existence to the world. Stop performing your life like it's an audition. You are not on a stage. You are in a community. And your real work isn't impressing strangers. It's making an impact where you stand. If you're still not convinced, consider this. The philosopher drops a truth bomb when he says, "Those who hear my talk today can be happy right now, but those who don't never will." You want to call that a scam? Fine, but ask yourself, are you really any happier calling it a scam than you would be living like it's true? Key takeaway. Happiness isn't an achievement. It's a decision to contribute, to connect, and to accept that you're enough, even if the world never throws you a parade. Favorite quote, happiness is the feeling of contribution. Dancing through life. You want to dance through life, huh? Sounds poetic, but let me be crystal clear. If your version of dancing is just flailing around, hoping the music saves you, congratulations, you're just another victim of the greatest life lie. Yes, capitalized, because it deserves it. Here's the ugly truth. Most people don't live. They rehearse. They prepare. They get ready for a life that never actually starts. They sell themselves the story that right now is just a bridge, a stepping stone, a warm-up. And that, my friend, is how people die without ever actually having lived. Now let's detonate this polite delusion with something you probably don't want to hear. There is no mountaintop, no arrival point, no grand finale where a narrator reads your story back to you and pats you on the head. If you're waiting to become someone, or for life to begin when you get the job, the partner, the body, or the spotlight, you've already lost the plot. Because as Adlerian psychology dares to assert, life isn't a line. It's not a climb. It's not a Netflix series with a season finale. It's a dance. And guess what? If you're not dancing now, you're not living. You're just marking time. The so-called successful people you worship, the violinists, the lawyers, the authors, you think they made it because they had a master plan? No, they were dancing, moment by moment, day by day. They weren't en route. They weren't obsessed with a destination. They were alive in their practice, their study, their craft. And that's what made the journey beautiful, not the arrival. If they became great, it wasn't because they raced up the mountain fastest. It's because they stopped worrying about the summit altogether. So here's the call out. If you're still clinging to your future self as the hero who will swoop in and save your life from its current mediocrity, you are lying to yourself. Stop acting like you're in a waiting room. Stop putting off being the person you say you want to be. The later you fantasize about, it doesn't exist. There's only now. And if you aren't living it fully, openly, messily, you're just existing in a dim twilight, shining weak light on ghosts of the past and foggy shapes of the future, while the present sits in the dark, waiting to be noticed. This is what the book drives home with blistering clarity. When you shine a bright spotlight on the here and now, the past disappears, the future dissolves, and you're left with what actually matters, the present moment, not as a placeholder, but as the only reality that counts. When you live that way, each moment becomes complete, not in some romanticized, Instagrammable, grateful vibes nonsense, but in a way that says, I showed up, I did what mattered, I was here, fully. So why do people avoid this kind of life? Because dancing in the now is terrifying. There's no safety net. You can't point to tomorrow's trophy to justify today's suffering. You can't say, it'll all make sense later, because later doesn't exist. The courage to live this way is rare. That's why the book isn't just about happiness. It's about war. A war against passivity, against life as trajectory, against the dead-eyed sleepwalking that people mistake for adulthood. It's about reclaiming each moment from the tyranny of someday. And if you're thinking, but what about meaning? What if life really is pointless? That's adorable. Adler smacks that question down like a fly. Life has no general meaning, and that's fantastic news. It means you get to assign the meaning. You, not your parents, not society, not even the version of you that existed yesterday. You, right now. Every second is an empty canvas begging to be danced on. You get to make it art or scribble. But don't you dare pretend you're powerless. So here's your punch in the soul. Stop treating life like a train ride to a better you. Get off the damn train, burn the tracks, lace up your shoes and dance like there's no choreography, because there isn't. The rhythm is now, the music is now, the meaning is what you give it. Not what you'll find at the top of the mountain, not what you'll earn after suffering enough, but what you breathe into this exact, irreplaceable moment, over and over again. Key takeaway: the moment you stop treating life like a destination is the moment you start living it. The present isn't practice, it's the point. Favorite quote: dance in earnest the moments of the here and now. As long as you are dancing, you will get somewhere. Conclusion: you've been lied to, not maliciously, not with fangs bared. No, it was polite, subtle, the kind of lie that wears a smile and sips coffee at breakfast with you. The lie whispered that your worth is out there, hidden behind approval, perfection, achievement, trauma resolution, and 1,000 other hoops you were never meant to jump through. But now the game is up. The illusion is broken, and if you followed this journey from beginning to end, you've got no more excuses. The truth is brutal, but it's also liberating. You are already free. You are already enough. And life, your life, is not some linear climb to a shining peak. It's a chaotic, absurd, beautiful dance that happens moment by moment. Not once you've healed, not once you're rich, not once the world gives you permission. Now this book didn't hand you answers. It dragged you, sometimes kicking and screaming, into the ring with your own assumptions. It tore apart the myths you've been building your identity on. That trauma defines you, that your past is in charge, that happiness is earned, that anger is authentic, that change is hard, that people can't live honestly, that normal is weak, and most importantly, it destroyed the belief that you are broken. You're not broken, you're unpracticed, and that's where the real challenge begins, because knowing this stuff is easy. Living it, that's war. That's waking up every morning and declaring, I am not a victim of the past. I am not a slave to approval. I am not in competition with anyone. I am free to live, to contribute, to screw up, and to start again without apology. That's courage. That's freedom. That's what this book demanded from you. And if any part of you thinks this is over, think again. This was never a lesson. It's a launch pad. The real work starts the moment you stop reading. So what do you do now? You act, you choose, you start, here, now. And if this hits you in the gut, the way it was meant to, go buy the book. Don't just consume content about it. Don't settle for passive understanding. Go grab the courage to be disliked and the courage to be happy. Annotate it, fight with it, let it make you uncomfortable, let it ruin your favorite excuses. Because these books are not for the faint of heart, they're for the ones who are done pretending they're powerless. It's your life, you're the only one who can live it, so stop watching, stop waiting, and go dance.